Good morning. Welcome to the March meeting. We've brought sun for you all. There are no members of the public, so I won't go down the fire drill. Do we all remember it? We need to go out the front. No, the cleric starts and lose. Can you turn your phones to silent? And I will go straight into apologies for absence. So we've got apologies from Christine, Mike Kelly, who will be along a bit later, Evelyn, who's not very well, and Laura, who her boys are very well actually. Item 2, declarations of interest. I will start with you, Robin.
No.
Jeremy.
I should declare that on planning, the railway one, I'm chairman of the Parish Council, and they are quoted in but I have nothing identified dog in the fight, as it were, but if I should go out, please advise me.
Oh yes, sorry, microphone. Please use the microphone when speaking. Thank you.
Right. And on the other one, I am a member of the National Trust, and
Oh dear. You want to start declaring that?
yes, and the Exmoor Society. So, and they've responded.
No, you're fine on that one. Stephen. No. No. Nick.
Nothing to declare.
Theo. And neither me. So, item 3, Chairman's announcement. I'd like to thank Judy, who was our Member Services Officer for 7 years, and welcome Carol back. And some of us know Carol from before. She's very efficient. So we'll all be fine in Carol's hands. Carol sent an email out to tell us all when she's working, and you'll find that she's very helpful. So welcome, Carol. Minutes of the last meeting, because I had somebody to propose. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Jeremy. All those in favour? That's unanimous, Carol. So we'll quickly go through them as usual. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. All fine. Thank you. Public speaking. We don't have any for the authority meeting, but the last time was 13, I think, for this afternoon. So we look forward to meeting the members of the public. And then we'll go into item 6, and that's with Ben.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members.
Morning.
Good morning. The paper before you sets out our proposed budget for 2024-25, our medium-term financial plan for the period 24-25 through to 28-29, and also a budget management accounts update for you for the third quarter of our current financial year, 2023-24. Members will be probably acutely aware that 24-25 is actually the final year in a 3-year settlement for us in terms of National Park grant, which has seen our National Park grant flatlined at £3.2 million. This is in fact our 6th year at this level without any sort of inflationary increase. You've got a chart on screen before you, which members of President Papat would have seen that previously. The lower blue line is the current position on National Park grant, following from the position prior to the comprehensive spending review back in 2010-2011, when we were roughly £4.2 million worth of National Park grant. The orange line is an inflated position on CPI, which shows that we're kind of roughly about 50% below the level we would have been were our National Park grants to increase with inflation. The challenge to balance our budgets has been increasingly more dramatic over this period. By way of context, our National Park grant accounts for around 75% of our total income. Our expenditure continues to grow. We've seen recent inflationary spikes from both the COVID pandemic, from the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, from the recent Middle East situation, and by general inflationary pressures otherwise as well, in terms of government's approach and policy. That has presented us as an organisation, along with our family of, well, the entire local government family, local businesses and individuals, with a battle to survive from a financial perspective. We ourselves have faced significant budgetary pressures over this last 18 months. Following my predecessor report to you this time last year, we have seen a kind of cost-saving requirement of around £400,000 presented to us. Over the past 18 months, the organisation has been going through a substantive business process review to, firstly, to meet the need for those budget gap savings to be made, but also to refocus our work to meet national park purposes. And as members, you've had the opportunity to feed into our corporate planning process, which Claire, my colleague, will speak on shortly. But that shapes our corporate plan for 24-25 and the priorities for that, and which this budget and medium-term financial plan are based on. In this slide, on the screen, you will see two graphs. The lower graph just shows our position in terms of other national park authorities, in terms of level of national park grant received. We receive the second least amount of national park grant. Let's just give you a bit of context. And the chart to the upper right, the blue colouring on the left for each of the years 24-25 up to 27-28 indicates the level of savings that were required as set out in the 23-24 budget. The orange, not red, column indicates those which we are projecting in the course of this medium-term financial plan for these 4 years. So our corporate priorities are aims to be factored into this budget. One of the important tools in monitoring and managing our budgets is our management accounts process. So we continue to produce management accounts on a monthly basis. We have regular quarterly reviews of our budget holders and leadership team, and we present to you on a quarterly basis our progress with that. Single-page summaries provided in Appendix 1, along with headline points in paragraph 2.2. And in the slide, you'll just see a very kind of high-level overview of what is contained in the report in section 2.2. Essentially, the overall position we're projecting as at the quarter-3 position, month 9, is an underspend of £22,000 against the November budget, revised budget that was set. That's roughly 1% of our overall budget. The core budget which is set, which is in Appendix 2, is essentially the recurring costs of staff, goods and services, and our income. This has been reviewed several times during the year. It has been brought to FAPAP, the Finance and Performance Advisory Panel. It has been reviewed by leadership team and our delivery team members. I'm pleased to say that despite our very pressing budgetary challenges, we are able to set a balance and propose a balanced budget to be set for 24-25. I've already mentioned that the business process review over the last 18 months has been enacted. Every part of the organisation has contributed to meeting our savings requirements and our need to reprofile ourselves. The report provides the business review process elements in paragraph 3.4. Also in the slide above, I've given a rough kind of detail about where we've met those savings. Each of these actions contains some risk and some challenge. There have been and there will continue to be some tough decisions contained within the report, some actions which are not palatable to a number of groups of people. And there are also actions where we will face pressures again in the near future. As an example, we have used funding streams to support a lot of our work. When those funding streams come to a natural end or finish, for example, FIPL, and if they're not replaced with an equivalent opportunity, we will be in a similar position to require savings or other schemes to support. A significant change introduced this year has been to revisit our subjective headings. Back in 2010, as I said before, we were faced with a comprehensive spending review, massive reduction in our workforce, in our funding. We made some amendments to our structure at the time and come up with a bubble system, which categorised our organisation into 3 elements: support to land managers, support to national park users, and support to community. And we've used those blocks ever since. So in this budget, we have taken a review to revisit these to match those that are required by DEFRA in terms of setting national park grants or reporting on national park grants, also reporting on accounts and other structures. So we've tried to realign in Appendix 2 these categories with the cost centres and operations of the authority. Alongside our core budget, we also have our programmes, partnerships and contributions to reserve elements. This is historically the balance left after determining the core budget requirements from National Park grants and other income sources. It's our support for a longer term view on achieving our National Park priorities, both through the engagement of partners but also looking to our own estate. Investing such things as supporting our next partnership plan, which is in creation currently. A number of key elements have been top sliced for this, as shown within Appendix 3 and also quite small on the screen above. These sit outside the core budget, but have obligations for specific projects or services which have longevity tending to be greater than 1 year. So these elements have been described in the reports, primarily paragraph 4.3 and 4.4. I'll move on through if you want to give me questions at the end, that'd be great. Sections 5 and 6 of the report detail our capital and capital investment strategy. Appendix 4 details our programme for the year, capital programme for the year. This is predominantly focused around the works at Driver Farm, which members agreed in December 2023. What is quite interesting to see, though, is the detail of the pre-existing schemes, which are sat at the top of that appendix. It just really shows the breadth and the significance of what has been achieved over these past few years. This authority has a moderately low-risk attitude towards capital investment in comparison to other local government bodies. Our capital expenditure is predominantly focused on maintaining or replacing existing assets, as opposed to producing, procuring new ones. In Appendix 5, I've provided with detail of our reserves position as at 1st of April. So I've estimated our draw from reserves in the current financial year, 23-24, and adding in those elements we've discussed in terms of on-screen projects and programmes. We hold two main types of reserve. We've got our general fund and contingency reserves, which are essentially unallocated, and we have a large amount of earmarked reserves, which are held to support projects and programmes. They potentially come from past funding streams. They're for specific purposes in supporting part priorities, corporate plan objectives, partnership plan priorities. And in this Appendix 5, our earmarked reserves have been categorised across the new subjective headings as well, just to give an idea of the resourcing available to each section. We hold three contingency reserves: our general fund, a general contingency and a legal contingency fund. So with our general fund reserve, which is around about £350,000 at the end of 23-24, this equates to roughly 1/12 or a month of our total income, and is really required by us as a base for working capital. Overall, the level of reserves is expected to reduce by around £300,000 during this current financial year, 23-24. And with the contributions from reserve in Appendix 3, we anticipate starting the year with around 3.1 million, 3.2 million total reserves. And as Section 151 officer, I am content to state that our level of reserves is adequate to meet our current and the needs of the medium-term financial plan as anticipated in this document. Section 8 of the report takes you through our medium-term financial plan process, and the plan is visible in Appendix 6. So the medium-term financial plan is a skeletal document for the authority's financial planning. It maps out our assumptions on income generation and our spending patterns, our understanding of the financial variables that exist. And as is customary, I have set out the plans for the coming 5-year period in a report in front of you. You'll be acutely aware of, as I've raised a couple of times, this is the final year of 3-year government spending review. The report contains a more detailed view of our core aspects of income and expenditure. The most significant aspect, however, is the expectation of continued flatlined national park grants through the life of this plan. This is a very serious situation, and I cannot stress enough that without some sort of inflationary increase to our national park grants, our financial situation will not improve. We will continue to be looking at reducing expenditure, maximising income beyond that which we already do. But without some sort of change, we'll inevitably be staring at a further business review in the latter years of this plan. That is abundantly obvious. In section 8.15, I provide some sensitivity analysis in regard to percent change to affecting some of our major variables: National Park grants, our staff pay award, interest received, and trade and income. But the most significant of these two being National Park grants and cost of living awards on staffing. And in section 9, detail our strategic risks in the continuation of our work, which does impact on these budgetary areas, and there's no surprise to see that National Park grants and pay factor awards feature heavily in those risks. So we've rattled through all these sections of this report. To conclude, whilst you're seeing that the current financial climate, still for the coming 5 years, is going to be subject to some quite heavy future gazing. We've got a potential new government on the horizon. Our financial challenges, our significant financial challenges, remain. The report, however, sets out before you enables authorities to set a balanced budget for the coming year, and it provides sufficient resources for the next iteration of the partnership plan, which will be brought before you members shortly. Thank you for your time. I'll take any questions.
Dominic.
Thank you. Yeah, very clear, very interesting report, very useful, and also really impressive, again, how one's been able to somehow make these numbers work. It is still astonishing to me, really, that this has been going on for years, and still we trundle on, and actually a lot of the services that need to be done still get done. That's extraordinary, really. A quick thing on advocacy, because that's really coming, the last thing you said, really, which is just trying, which we've brought up before, which is basically trying to ensure that one thing we need to continue to do is ensure that the public, particularly people living in Exmoor, are aware of why the budget has been cut, you know, who makes those decisions, that they're political decisions, and therefore everybody has a stake in that to actually say their piece. Dartmoor, I noticed, did that first chart you did, showing the gap. They released that, or at least they allowed it to be released, because I've seen that quite a lot of their version of that, which is quite similar, has been on Twitter quite a lot and various other places. So my first question is are we also permitted to share that information? And if we are permitted to share it, and if you could let us have a version of that chart, then I suggest that that's something we should do. It's really very effective in order to show what's happened. I think your issue about planning for the end of funding streams is really important, and I suppose that's just a flag there. You know, this is the problem with things like FIPL, where it seems nobody really seems to have a plan as to whether that's going to continue or not. It seems to roll from one year to the next, and things like that aren't helpful, and therefore what the plan is going to be to try and anticipate the end of those funding streams. And then the other issue, again, which is linked to the advocacy point, which is on Appendix 2, when I first looked at this, and I was trying to understand to make sure I was grasping what was said here, because I noticed somewhere else in your report, which we've mentioned before, is this issue of the percentage of the budget which is going on staff cost. You know, whether it's 70% or 80% or 90%, which seems to always be sort of flagged as something that's really important we should know, which to me, actually, I'm not quite sure is particularly important. What's more important, in fact, is this new the distribution across the categories that you've got here. What is, I think, would be more interesting to people who don't understand sets of accounts and don't necessarily have a grasp of what the National Park does, would be to know, in a kind of pie chart, whatever it is, which is, well, we actually, and this is the total expenditure, not including the grant, but this is a net of the revenue we receive from, for instance, other forms of funding. So to take one thing, for instance, conservation of natural environment. If you're to ask somebody, well, the National Park, you know, what do? Well, they do conservation of the natural, you know, that is a big thing of what we should be doing. So what, as a percentage of our budget, how much is spent on that? And more importantly, how much has that changed? So now you have these new categories. It would be quite interesting to know, on average, how has those budgets been distributed? I'm not saying go back and do every set of accounts again for the last 5 years. That would be great. But more just sort of in terms of what your baseline model is to how it is now, is basically how those things are shifting slightly. Maybe not for this year, but maybe for next year, when you've already, by then you'll have 2 years, if you like, to compare and a budget to compare against as well. It's only because, again, for communication, that would just be visually useful. It would immediately go, look, this is how we distribute the resources of the park across these different areas of what we do. So it has explanatory power in that sense, but also it's useful for advocacy, again, to try and promote the point. This isn't all going on. The problem is when we say it's 80% on staff, that just feeds into the narrative that, and which we're hearing a lot at the moment, a lot of other councils, it was on the radio this morning, well, that's just because the councillors paying themselves too much, and or the civil servants doing all this, and that's ridiculous. It's about the work that gets done. So these categories, I think, are really useful. So, sorry, it's probably a long-winded way of putting it, but hopefully that makes some sense. Thanks.
Thank you. Do you want to take a bunch of questions and then come back?
I'm happy to.
Okay. Because we've got a few people. Next on my list was Andrew.
Morning, Ben. Thanks for the detailed report. And the figure you showed, which Dominic referred to, the graph where obviously the grant currently now is 3.2 million, but really should be 6.8 million if you allow for inflation. Really shows what a great job you've been doing to keep things going. The two questions I had, one was around the capital expenditure around Driver Farm, and the second was around the business review figures, which I'm looking to see in here. The capital Driver Farm, there's a statement in here, and I think we all know, is that it should be funded from the capital receipts of land, and if not, else other sources. So sort of 2 points there, really. How's that looking in terms of those capital receipts paying for capital Driver Farm? And if that doesn't happen, what are the alternative resources? I presume the reserves. So that's sort of one area. Then the second question is around the business review figures, which you showed up there. I couldn't see them referred to in here, and I couldn't see how they played into the figures in here fully. I'm probably missing something. That was it, yeah.
Thank you. And the next person I had was Fran. And then we'll let Ben answer those, and then we'll go to the next 3 people.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Following on from Dominic's comments, I really very much like the idea of pictorially, showing exactly how we spend the money. I think that's much better than seeing what's just spent on staff. I always think that's a negative. That's not just for here. It's wherever business you are, and I think it would be more interesting to see, the work that we're actually doing, because we need the staff to get this work done. The other thing I was going to ask: are we actively lobbying government and opposition about the grant? Because I know we pulled out from being part of the group of all of the national parks, because for whatever reason we did that. I just thought, is there another way into lobbying government MPs, etc., and opposition as well as the current government? And the other item is the long-running planning issue that we have, which is costing us a lot of money. How and when can we get this sorted out? I don't know that we've had a big discussion recently on that for me to have a full understanding of it, because it's been such a long-running planning issue that some people know about more than others. Thank you.
Thank you, very helpful. Ben, do you want to do those 3, and then I'll come to the next people?
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for your comments. Andrew, first of all, yes, be glad we share that chart. It kind of fits into a lot of those comments, but actually it's quite illustrative of our situation over the last 15 years or so. In terms of the planning for ending the funding streams, yes, a difficult one. We are, as teams, attempting to secure as much funding in different areas to support our national park purposes as we possibly can. So it is really down to our delivery and leadership teams to review opportunities as they arise. We can lobby DEFRA in terms of their funding, especially for FIPL. But it's more of a reactive than a proactive nature, unfortunately, in this one. Sarah, do you want to say any more on that?
On the lobbying?
Or the grant side of things?
Yeah, I mean, there's been an ongoing discussion with DEFRA around the grant. I mean, they are fully aware of this, and we've been talking about it for several years now. I mean, at the moment, it looks like we have been promised this extra 500 next year, capital one-off. and they're working hard to try and get that onto our baseline, which would get us back up to sort of 3.6, which is 2.7, which would be really, really helpful. Do you want me to talk a bit more about other lobbying?
Would you like to talk about the relationship with National Park
Yes,
England,
that's what I
please?
was going to do now. So in terms of wider lobbying, CMP, I can't say too much on this. We've had a bit of a heads up. They're about to put a report out in the next couple of weeks, which is calling for all sorts of things to try and support national parks. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes with CMP. National Parks England, also through the Protected Landscape Partnership, also doing lots of things. We have been in some sort of initial discussions with the Protected Landscape Partnership and MPE about how Exmoor and the Broads could be kind of back in the family, because, I mean, I don't want to go into great detail now, but they have, that organisation has really changed quite substantially. A lot of the things we were asking for have happened. It's probably for another discussion. There's a new chief exec there, and she's taking really strong lead on this kind of lobbying work and trying to get the funding up. I can also briefly mention the property that we have been trying to sell. It is still for sale. We are going through a process now with our legal team, looking at trying to bring the price to something more realistic for the current market, but that we've got to go back through the courts to do that. That's where we are. But we are optimistic that, you know, a good chunk of that money will come back in the next sort of 6 months to a year, I would hope.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So just to finish off some of the queries I haven't answered, Andrew's point about the appendix, the proportion of national park grants on salaries. Yes, it's a bit of a historic measure. We tend to use it more following the CSR review in the early 2010s. As a use as a metric now, it's limited, I do agree, especially as we've kind of blurring the lines between what is core and non-core in terms of staffing. I think in this budget you'll find a lot of our team are actually bought into the whole structure, whereas in the past we would have had a funding post that wasn't actually bought into this staffing establishment. So I do definitely agree with that, and I think the metrics would suit the corporate plan elements really well. I mean, Claire's about to speak about the corporate plan. In the kind of the entry bits to that, I think it would really suit some eyes about what split of staffing is, what split of expenditure income is across those sections. It gives some context, and we can start to look across the board then, across years, to how that pans out for us and what that looks like in terms of kind of visible figures rather than just figures on the charts. So yeah, I'd take that on, and we can start to look at that and provide something for that. Capital-wise, the sale of East Anstey is still going through. It's progressing. That's about all I can say on that one at the moment. If that were to fall through, then our backstop is either reserves or the potential capital money that DEFRA has promised, but we've not seen any formal identification of that yet. Business process review figures and table, I'm happy to provide a schedule to members of that separately. I'm just showing the breakdown compared with the 23-24 proposed budget and our current position. So I'll endeavour to send that out as a separate paper. I think Fran's comments, the pictorial, the views of the money side of things, that's really covered, but I do wholeheartedly agree with that. Sarah's mentioned the active lobbying and also the planning situation at the moment. So, yeah. Any further questions?
Yes, I've got a couple more, yes. Jeremy, next.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and just firstly, well done, Ben. Absolutely great effort to hold it all together and to present it so well, and Chief Exec as well, I'm sure, on your team. Just going back to the comments around needing a diagram, I do agree, but the 80% staff costs are what delivers what we do, and we should ensure that majority of spend is shown within that chart of what's delivering what. Because it sounded as though, I'm sure you didn't mean it to be, but it sounded as though that 80% cost was separate and weren't involved in what we deliver. And they're absolutely what we deliver it by, isn't it? So please can I just ask that is explained and shown, so nobody can say, well, you know, look at the cost of running this place, it only delivers this. That is a delivery route, isn't it? Thank you. I'm sure I didn't need to say that, but I thought I felt I needed to. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Robin.
I've got a selection of comments really, Ben. Interesting around the discussions and comments from my point of view around the percentage of National Park grant taken on staff costs. I think to put it in a context in my mind, thinking about it at the moment, that if we'd index link National Park grant, the efficiencies within the organisation could potentially be highlighted. We'd be down to what, 60% of our National Park grant, if it had been an index linked National Park grant, would be staff costs, which would be less than it was at the start of that process. So let's look at what efficiencies have been produced and what's been done by it as well. Although it is quite concerning when you're looking at projected, if there is no substantive increase, a 98% level in 3 or 4 years' time. So I was just trying to find a good reason and a bright side to it, and I think there is there really. A couple other bits there really. A couple of challenges that sort of sit there quietly in the background, aside from our our legal challenge at the moment, which is there, would be around the likes of the security of funding. I see that our rights of way monies from both Somerset and Devon due to for review in 2025. Obviously, they're not exactly in the most wonderful of financial situations at the moment. That could potentially, I should imagine, cause us some consternation if there was to be a significant reduction into our approach to that, having managed to sort of stave that off in the meantime. The other bit is sort of recognisable that the top slice programmes that we can afford to run currently are very limited. And do you see them being able to be maintained at the current level, or will there need to be an approach? You know, there's the first two that's on the list obviously were the tourism one and the Hill Farm Network one. I think the Hill Farm Network have just been given another grant, haven't they, from King's Countryside Fund, as they call it now, was Princess Countryside Fund. I think they've been given another round of funding now, which is pretty unprecedented because that's considerably beyond what was ever expected for that type of funding. And only just something I'd like to ask around the lobbying bit, or I'd like to say, your question around lobbying, DEFRA have been lobbied at every opportunity and every time anyone anywhere near them, whether it be civil service staff or whether it be the politicians. I think the civil service staff recognise our challenges. The politicians, I fear, may have had plugs in their ears for a while trying to balance their own books. There is a breaking point, and it's not just coming within us. We're in probably a better financial position than many due to careful management in the past, but we have to keep lobbying, not helped, of course, by some press bits that have come out recently, like one I've got in front of me, if anyone wants to have a look, that challenges the value of national parks. And that's why we have to be really good at advocating what we do. And I'd question to Ben, do you think that we can ensure that we continue funding our media profile at the level that we need to make sure that what we do is seen? I did have a look at the website, our website, last night actually, and it's actually, to my mind, really looking quite good, a lot better than it has been in the past.
Thank you. I agree with that. The website's much more easier to navigate for somebody, I have to say, slightly challenged in that area. Me. Would you like to do those? And I've got 3 more speakers.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So coming back to Jeremy, yes, it is vitally important that percentage of staff. And I must say that our staff are invaluable, obviously. But if the other essential thing that they're doing at the moment is building capacity through is external funding. If we cut our staff base, we need these facilitators of external funding. They are a key role for us at the moment in terms of engaging partners, empowering the teams and bringing in external funding to suit projects. So yes, it's absolutely invaluable. That capacity is essential. I think that kind of covers one of Robin's first points as well. The other thing to say about that is we are not sitting still on the remainder of our income. Yes, National Park Grant accounts for 75% of our income. we are targeting every single area of the remaining 1.5 million to eke out where we can increases, improvements. So it's not a standing still approach. We are trying to make this work as best we can in the parameters that we're currently operating in. In terms of the challenges, yes, the rights of way, it's a risk, it's on there. We have the enhanced regard for our local central government bodies that kind of comes into play, but we will continue to monitor this in discussions with the teams. In terms of the subsidised programmes, then actually yes, you'll see in one of the appendices to the corporate plan paper that we have continued support for tourism and these other subsidised projects for the life of the medium-term financial plan as it currently stands. And yes, our intention is to continue media because we do need this interface between ourselves and our stakeholders.
Thank you. So I've got 3 more speakers. Bill, you are next.
Thank you, Chair. Chairman, sorry. Madam Chairman. Yes.
I identify as the chairman, so we're all very clear about that one.
You're not the chair, I know. Yes, thanks, Ben. It is impressive, actually, that, and I'll echo what other people said, how this has transpired and your projection going forward. I've got one question, and it's on contracted work. If you're looking through expenditure, apart from pay, the one thing that stands out is the contracted work, which is 30-odd thousand more than expected, and that's continuous through to the end of the period. And I just wonder why that seems to be an anomaly. Was it because the last year was lower than you expected, or is there some large chunk of expenditure extra forecast?
Thank you, Bill. Mandy, you're next.
Thank you very much. So just a few questions, none technical, and I was away the weekend, so I didn't have a chance to email you. Lucky you. The first thing really, I hope that there'll be a forward for the accounts, and for me that's the place you can really outline the great work that the park's done over the last year and all those outcomes, which is what people want to see. So I think that'll be the place for that, and even if you sort of spread some of that within a press release, I'm sure you will have that in hand. So firstly, the thank you. There's a huge amount of work that goes behind the savings and the team pulling the accounts together, so I thank you for that. But just a couple of questions. The first one, I suppose, is a soft challenge. In 4.3, you've got corporate vehicle and equipment money going into reserve, and you've also got the ash dieback. So my first questions are around that corporate vehicle and equipment. I know we want to electrify the fleet. Does that allow us to do that? Because I know in general the vehicles are a lot more expensive when you buy electric. And the second one, because if you want to add something somewhere, you've got to find somewhere to take it from. So my second question would be on the ash dieback. There's quite a healthy reserve for ash dieback there. I would presume you don't spend anywhere near that amount in a year. So the question was, could and should you put a bit less for ash dieback this year and a bit more into the electric vehicles? That was the first thing. My second question is Appendix 1. There's a line on conservation advice, which was an overspend, and I couldn't line it up with the notes on the side, so that's in Appendix 1. So if you could just explain what that is, because when the notes, they were sort of lots of notes there, and I didn't know which referred to that line. Have you got that there? Yeah. And in Appendix 2, there's lots of variations there. Quite a lot are over, and quite a lot. Some have moved up and some have moved down. And I wasn't clear whether that's because you've been doing some changing of budget lines. I just wondered if that was the case. And last question, you've always talked about it, is top slicing. I've never come across top slicing as a phrase within accounts. I'm not 100% sure what it means, so I will ask that question as well. Because if I don't, I'm sure there will be possibly some others that don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Marcus, you're next.
Thank you. And I think my question, I don't know whether it's for yourself, Ben, or whether it's for the more experienced members, I suppose. I thought the graph you put up was quite, although we probably all know it, it was quite actually shocking to see it on the screen there. And yeah, obviously, as I think you said about 25% is only income. Obviously, when you dependent on 75%, that doesn't go up or goes down. That's very difficult. It's like having a business where you can't put your prices up, I suppose. And for me, it's like, well, I don't know how long I've been a member here, but I mean, this is all we've ever talked about, and it's all we've ever talked about at a certain other place. But what we know is at a certain other place is if we can't set a balanced budget, what happens? What I don't quite know, and I apologise if I should know, but at what point does this all stop? Because, you know, in the best will of the world, I can't see the new government, I say the new government in expectation, in hope rather than expectation, is going to suddenly find a load of money, and those politicians are going to say, oh, you know, it's the same civil servants advising them, and they're going to probably turn up to suddenly get into power and find they haven't got any money again. And so at what point does it stop, and at what point are we in a position where as a national park we can't actually perform the purposes without relying on volunteers, etc., etc., because we know in certain other places a lot of statutory services that we have to do, and where are we here that we have to do it? I mean, do we just, you know, one day just chuck our hands up in the air and say, well, that's it, we're not doing planning anymore? You know, I'm sure that's probably the last thing anybody wants to stop doing, but I'm just wondering, where does it stop? Because if this carries on, you know, the writing's on the wall, whether it be now or in 10 years' time, and you just, that graph is only going to, you know, what we can do is be left with one member of staff trying to do everything, and they're trying to herd a load of volunteers. And anyone who's tried to run a political campaign knows that what you can't do is rely on volunteers. So yeah, so that's my question. It's not really a detailed question about the accounts. It's more of like a big picture. Where does it stop? When at some point can we worry about the park and stop worrying about the money?
Okay, well, I think we'll take that one to one side, and I will say, just for the public record, that we are very, very grateful to all our volunteers who do an excellent job and indeed help run the place, and the views expressed 30 seconds ago are not the views of the authority. Ben, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. So firstly on Bill's terms, contracted work, the primary reason for that increase is our audit fee, which has gone up by 151% in the 2024-25 year. All our local authority members here will be acutely aware of the audit situation that's progressing currently. So that is the primary reason for contracted work increasing.
External auditors.
External auditors.
Please, yes.
Interest. Sorry, lost the plot a little bit there. So, Mandy, yes, in terms of there will be a full word to the accounts, and it will be a narrative one. We'll provide some metrics and some graphing in there, and some explanation of the outcomes and achievements. Yes, definitely. In terms of soft challenge, yes, we are trying to electrify our fleet as much as possible. We have got 3 vehicles now. We've got a Renault Zoe pool car. We've got our 9-seater Pinkry minibus, and we've also recently replaced one of the Ranger Land Rovers with an EV van. And we are looking to do that more so across our fleet. So yes, primarily when we're looking for a vehicle replacement, it is EV first. When we're looking at equipment replacement, Exmoor depot, we are looking at electric battery wherever possible, as long as it meets the kind of business criteria and needs. So yes, definitely, that is our intention. We want to meet our kind of zero carbon aims. With our ash dieback, I think if you're referring to the woodland reserve that's held in the reserves, that is more to do with the facilitation of our woodland officers in terms of creating woodlands rather than managing ash dieback. We're spending approximately 25 to 30k a year on ash dieback, and we have done for a number of years now. And the hope is it will be dying back, but unfortunately it seems to be on the continuation. So that woodland reserve isn't for ash dieback, that's for a multitude of projects that our Great Woodlands team have on the go at the moment. The Appendix 1 issue, where you see a kind of a large overspend projected on our conservation advice and support budget. In the reports itself, under section 2.2, the third kind of bullet point loosely refers to that. It's mainly around kind of additional project spend for some of the project areas. And top slicing. I mean, top slicing, we've had it for a couple of decades. I inherited it when I was here first time round. It's taken a proportion of the grant that we receive put it towards projects to support our management plan, our partnership plan, our corporate priorities. So it's almost away from the core budget side principles. It's the projects that may take more than a year to progress or are partner induced. I don't know if that's a very good explanation of it. Yeah. No, really, yeah, I mean, it's part of the fabric here, really, and we tend to continue it. It's quite a useful way of kind of delivering partnership plans priorities as well.
And the last one there was just that variation in Appendix 2. There's lots of ups and downs.
Oh yes, sorry, yes, Appendix 2. So with the change in subjective heading going from the 3 bubbles to the 8 kind of DEFRA headings, I've given you some notes on the far right of that appendix which kind of explain it. Predominantly, we have stripped any leadership team costs from the services that were themselves into the corporate and democratic core. So you'll see there's a large increase in corporate management, but also corresponding reductions in things like strategy, performance, finance, our conservation advice and support. So predominantly it's the leadership team members coming out of the individual budgets into the core. There's also some areas where we've changed, where we've moved media around, for example, where we've split out our education volunteer teams across different sections. So this is obviously the first year of this, so we are going to have some quite significant variances compared to prior years, where we've almost done an arbitrary split in those years. But hopefully it'll make more sense as we move forwards.
Thanks. Just a footnote would have been really helpful there, because I think there's a great explanation for it. Just
Thank you.
Now, can I just check, was there anybody else who wanted to say anything? Andrew, you're coming back. Just let me check there's nobody else who wants to say anything, hasn't said anything. Oh, Susan.
So it was just really came back to where Dominic started, because I think it just slightly got lost in other conversations. The point about the pie chart showing where we spend our money. Because I think it's really like, you want to see, like, charities do this all the time. They're really good. They spend 99% of our money is spent on doing our work. If you look at a pie chart of like RNLI or a Wildlife Trust, they all do that really well. And I think we could show that really well for us as well. And then people see that that's what we're doing. Everybody who's employed is doing the work. They're not sitting around doing whatever people think they do. So I think there's lots of really nice examples out there, and it's such a huge selling point with charities. And so I think it'll be a really good thing to have a nice clear pie chart. It's just that we lost that a bit, and I think it's a really good point that Dominic made.
Thank you. And Andrew.
Just a very small one, Chairman. It's building on Robin's point, which the 90% figure, which I know Ben and I were talking about before the meeting, is based on the 3.2 million, but we've accepted the 3.2 million actually isn't the right figure because of inflation. So I've upped the figure to 6.8. If you do the calculation then, it actually shows the staff cost to be 45%. Which actually, to me, that's probably the right calculation then, Ben. So you're saying that actually the NPG should have been this. So it doesn't help with the money, but it does show what has been achieved in efficiency, which I thought was a very good point, Robin. So yes, it is a better measure of efficiency savings. But yeah, that's all.
Thank you. Right, we're going to go to the vote now, so I can see no further hands. Gentleman down the end, please. And I'd like to add a recommendation, because we've got 4 at the moment, so I'll read through what we've already got and then add one in. So first, to note the budget, month 9 budget monitoring position for 23-24, approve the core capital and programmes, partnerships and contributions to reserves budget for 24-25, as summarised in appendices 2, 3 and 4. Note the position on reserves is detailed in appendix 5. 4, with adopt the attached medium-term financial plan appendix 6, and 5, which I would like to add in, is to thank the finance team for all the hard work in producing this. Mandy.
Just to add to that, it's not only the finance team, I think teams right across the organisation have had to make savings for the budget, so I'll just caveat that.
Specifically, I'd like to thank the finance. I did think about that, but specifically because they don't get a lot of thanks, so I'd just like to highlight that obviously everybody's had to go through it. We'd end up thanking ourselves as well if we're not careful. And I'm going to, my mother and the dog and everybody else. So if we could just keep it, if you don't mind, to the finance team for this particular item, because we do have other items where we'll come to where the Chief Executive is presenting, well, I think that would be more appropriate for the whole team, unless you would wish to do something different. No. It's just that you don't get a lot of thanks hidden in your back office there. I just wanted to highlight. So as long as we're all happy with that, could I have somebody propose, please? Jeremy, very quiet normally. And somebody second. Andrew, you happy? All those in favour? That's unanimous, Carol. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was really useful. I thought the questions were very pertinent, and it helped. It helped a lot to keep it on message, and we've noted all that. And certainly the items around lobbying, the Chief Executive and I have had a conversation already, but we will be having further conversations about how to use my time usefully. I don't think you'll know, but I will have some more freed up time very shortly where I can do other things for the authority. So moving on to item 7, we have Claire come to talk about our corporate plan.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good morning, members. So, yes, I'm presenting to you today the plans that we have for this forthcoming year, 2024 to 25. The first thing just to sort of say is that this is set within the context of the 3-year corporate strategy that we've agreed, which sets out 6 sort of headline priorities. So most of the structure of what I'm going to be talking about is running through each of those 6 priorities. However, before I get there, one of the things that we decided to do this time, which is slightly different to how we presented things to you before, is just to pull out in a bit more detail the work that we do in terms of delivering our core services, because we often find that that sort of gets lost within the plan itself, because there's a lot of actions that are highlighted. We've also brought into the plan itself the performance indicators that we use, so hopefully that sort of brings it together a bit more and helps make it more understandable for everybody in terms of the service delivery and how we measure performance. The indicators are mostly what we've been using as leadership team and as finance and performance advisory panel. We report to you on. There are a few that we've sort of tweaked a little bit just because of sort of updated changes needing to be reflected in them. As I've sort of highlighted in the report, this year, one of the things, or this coming year, one of the things we'll look to do is a bit more of a review of those performance indicators, because we have also got the National Protected Landscapes Outcomes Framework that government has recently issued, which is for the national park, but obviously as an authority, because all of our work is around delivering the partnership plan, I think we'll want to have a look at how those two things marry together. So not for now, but for next year, we'll be looking at just aligning those two sets of indicators. So in terms of our high quality services, as set out on the slide in front of you, we just flag the core work we do around conservation, rights of way, information and education, our national park centres and communications work, our planning service and local plan, the sort of work we do engaging with the business sector, local communities to support the economy, our estate, and the sort of corporate operational running of the organisation. So that's the first section in Appendix 1. I'll then go on to just flag up some of the key bits of the actions for this coming year. I'm not going through them all, you'll be pleased to know, because there are quite a lot of them, so you have them in the report, but just wanted to pick out some of the things where there's been some new actions or priority actions. The first thing to say is that we've sort of highlighted there's a number of core cross-cutting actions which are actually really exciting in terms of a lot of the things that are coming up now, really positive in terms of some of that bringing in new money to deliver on, also funding that we've been given from government, for example the Farming and Protected Landscape Scheme. So I think there's a lot of really exciting work for this year. Top of the list is getting the partnership plan completed, which is well underway now. We have the Pioneers lottery application, which is due to go in next month, and obviously wait for the outcome of that, but I'm very hopeful that we will get a great scheme out of that. Mentioned Farming and Protected Landscapes, which has got another year to run. Income generation, as Ben already said, that remains a really high priority for us across the organisation, and some further work that's going to be done to sort of give a bit of a strategy around that. Another really core piece of work, which will be cross-cutting across all of the teams, is around the landscape recovery scheme that we're going into the 2-year development phase for in terms of Exmoor's Heartlands. And then in terms of our estate, progressing the plans for drivers, a big area of work for this next year and beyond. So just going through those 6 priorities from our corporate strategy. I've picked out just the sort of new actions, the priority actions here. There's a lot of really great ongoing work as well, but it will take me a long time to go through all of them. So in terms of the ones I just wanted to flag so that you're aware, there are some new actions there around us looking into the issues around atmospheric pollution on our designated sites. This is something which you'll be aware of is sort of impacting on things like planning applications for new agricultural barns, but it's also more widely relevant in terms of our nature recovery and the condition of the designated site. So we're commissioning a piece of work to look into that in more detail for us. So I think that will be a really interesting and important piece of work. We're also this year delighted that we've managed to get funding to do the moorland breeding bird survey. This is something which we have a really good time depth series of data around. It's really helpful in terms of helping understand the state of our moorlands. It looks at vegetation as well as birds, so it's a really great piece of work, so we're going to be delivering that this year. And in terms of the climate crisis, there's a few pieces of work. So the national parks, UK national parks as a family, are looking to join Race to Zero, which is about demonstrating leadership in terms of responding to climate change. Well, obviously, we've got the ongoing work we're doing as an organisation to look at our own carbon impact and reducing that. And then another sort of piece of work linked to the partnership plan is around looking at climate adaptation, so that we can feed that more into the work we're doing. So we've got both mitigation and adaptation. In terms of the next priority around a welcoming place for all, improving people's health and well-being, the new actions there are around some changes that's happening in terms of how the tourism groupings operate. So this is really just making sure that Exmoor is represented in those new partnerships that are being established. We're working with Exmoor. Another really good sort of piece of work that we do mainly sort of every other year is the Exmoor Visitor Survey, and again we've got some really good time depth information and data on that, and that just helps to inform the work that we do around tourism, visitor management, etc., and informs the partnership plan. So that will be happening this year again. And then another piece of work that we're looking into is establishing an Exmoor Nature Festival. This is something which we think actually could work really well. For example, we have the Dark Skies Festival in the autumn, and maybe a nature festival could be something that we could have sort of earlier on in the spring, summer, as another sort of engagement set of activities. So we'll be looking into that. We've got our ongoing priority actions around delivering our learning engagement programme. If funding is successful, we're hoping to continue the Young Rangers programme and look at a second phase of Generation Green. And then obviously the ongoing work around the rights of way and access network, refocusing that work again around the resources that we've got now for that, and trying to ensure that whatever we do, we look to make the network more resilient to climate change. In terms of the care for landscape and heritage, these are all ongoing actions, but some really good work still going on around the restoration of Ashcombe Gardens and the Ashley Coombe designed landscape. We've got the Dark Skies Festival happening again this year, and we're also looking to do a piece of work around lighting as well to sort of support dark skies. still trying to move forward on the design supplementary planning guidance, so looking to get that delivered this year. Further work around Exmoor's heritage assets and condition surveys sort of linked to the Pioneers project, if we get funding for that. And then just continuing to progress work on conservation area appraisals, etc., and maintaining the historic environment record. So all those pieces of work continuing this year. On the priority around a flourishing, vibrant communities and businesses, we've got obviously continuing to deliver the National Park Planning Service, and we're really, as I reported before, really pleased that we've now got some funding to address the planning backlog, so that will be really positive to be able to do that this year. Ongoing actions around working with businesses and partners to deliver the Royal Enterprise Exmoor vision, promoting our sort of schemes around Care More for Exmoor and the sort of local produce through Exmoor, Eat Exmoor and the Exmoor Young Chef competition. Ongoing work around implementation of the local plan, and we will be needing to start preparation for our review of the local plan, which will need to start happening. And obviously, as you're aware, we have the statutory biodiversity net gain requirements, which came in for large sites in February and will come in for small sites in April. So implementation of that will be ongoing through our planning service. In relation to a high-performing estate, obviously progressing the estate strategy, just again sort of key priorities for us around Driver Farm, with lots of work going on around sort of management plans for specific sites, quite high level, but also including improving our information to base those on around baseline surveys, trying to look at how we reuse 7 to 9 4 Street in Dalton, and the progression of the disposal of assets has already been discussed. And then just ongoing management of our woodland estate. It always appears that there's a sort of a small line there, but there's a really enormous amount of work that goes on under all of that. And management of the ponyherd, again, all pieces of work which just sort of add up to contributing to delivery of national park purposes through what we do on our estate. And then the final priority around being a great organisation to work for. So we have the organisational development strategy, which we're continuing to deliver, and the piece of work we want to work on this year is particularly around updating our values as an organisation, and also sort of staff events and training behind that. Continuing to take positive action on equality, diversity and inclusion. And then there are sort of 3 new actions here, which is around developing a sort of an overarching communication strategy. So that's been mentioned a little bit already today in terms of our work as an organisation and our budgets, but overall what we want to be doing is really promoting all the great work that's been going on. And then there are 2 other new actions around sort of risk management, further work that we need to do to properly integrate that with our performance management corporate reporting. And we've got a new geographical information system, GIS system, which is again quite exciting in terms of some of the things it's going to be able to deliver, but piece of work to be done to get that implemented. I think, yes, that's it. Thank you.
Brilliant. So members, here's your chance to shape things. Jeremy, you're the first person to caught my eye.
Thank you, Chairman. Just looking at our 6 headlines, and you may argue against me, but on item 4, we don't mention farming or agriculture. I know it's a business. It's rather more than a business in my mind. It is the biggest thing that happens in the national park, really. And we have to try and assist farming. I'm being in there myself, and I did declare that interest. We need to try and encourage and assist farming to remain, whilst it remains economically viable to do, to deliver what we want to deliver in the way we want to deliver it in a national park. It is different from being off the park, but it's difficult. It's really difficult, and I would prefer that we embrace farming and agriculture with the business rather than hide it within. That's my only point. I'm sure others in the room might have views as well.
So I'll do what I did last time, take 3 people at a time, if that's all right. So next, Francis, you were next.
Yeah, it's a little bit in the same area. First of all, thank you. It's really helpful, and it's really helpful having how we measure added in at that point. Right, okay, sorry. Is that better? I think it's really helpful the way you've changed the way that it's set out. But it did for me point up a difference between Appendix 1 and Appendix 2 in the support for rural enterprise, where what we're measuring is very, very, very much about care more, and whereas the actions we're talking, albeit taking Jeremy's point, don't particularly talk about farming, and I agree with him and support him on that. But we do talk about the actions on the Enterprise Exmoor. We talk about, I'm just getting now to that, scrolling too far, the Rural Enterprise Exmoor vision, working with partners to produce local produce, promotion of local produce, that sort of thing, and just whether we could have in what we measure some idea of that's something we might want to look at, because it's really difficult to concentrate on the things that don't have KPIs when there's so much to do. Susan, you were next.
Thank you. Yeah, and thanks, Claire. And I think it's if you hadn't been in the previous paper discussion around money, and then you look at what we're doing, you'd think, is this the same organisation? So I think it's incredible what is being achieved, and I think what's really lovely is that we're able to be on the front foot and to look and find new opportunities and new funding. So we're not like shutting up shop and saying, right, we're just going to do this. And I think that's fantastic and a real credit to the organisation that we do that. I really just had just a few little points really. I think, Claire, it's great what you said about relating to the outcomes framework, because I was wondering about that. Obviously, that's a bit early for that, so if that comes in later, that's brilliant. But just a few things on the act, just going through the actions. So number 4, about the income strategy, developing income strategy. So myself and Dom and I think Evelyn were, for a short while, we had a little kind of external funding working group where we were a bit with when Josephine was in post. And I can't speak for the others, but I'd be very happy for that, obviously, to resurrect that and help with that. So that was just a little point on that. Sorry. Item 9, yeah, I think it's really great in terms of atmospheric pollution, in terms of impacts, although I do think a strategy to mitigate could be quite challenging, but obviously that would fit in with stuff around carbon and net zero, I suspect. Number 12, yeah, that's great in terms of the bird survey work. Item 24, and I know with the KPIs, I know that within individual projects we will have targets and outcomes and outputs. So this might be being too picky, but we're talking about delivering welcome days, which is brilliant, but we also talk about health and well-being and nature prescriptions projects. And I did just wonder, without wanting to put something in, is there something we could put in terms of a KPI around nature prescription work? I just think it would be a really nice, more focused, something with a bit more focus around health and well-being. Just give a look. I know it's tricky, but even if it was something empirical around nature prescriptions that we could add in, because that would give some real bit of weight up front. I know within the project there will be outputs and stuff going on, but I just wonder at the top level whether we could do something on that. I think nearly there. 57, sorry, I'm just going through, reading through. Now I think, 70th anniversary. I did know that, but that was quite exciting. But not really to should offer to bake a cake to save money for that. And I thought if we can get the funding for the Generation Green phase 2, that would be amazing in terms of what we could be doing at Pinkery. So fingers crossed for that. And then just coming back to Jeremy's point, I think I totally understand where he's coming from in terms of the farming stuff. And obviously, you know, like Fipple, for example, is a huge example of us supporting and working with the farming community. That's a lot of cash. I think it's maybe a thing of framing the presentation and just brings, you know, we might just want to add another header or have another something which actually, you know, you just talk about it in a different way. That might just help with that, because we are doing that. Fipple is, you know, is a really good, you know, good chunk of money going out consistently. So that was all. Thank you. It's all great.
Claire.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, okay, so on that point, obviously those 6 priorities are in our 3-year corporate strategy. So I think what you've just sort of described, Susan, is probably the way that, you know, we need to look at that, is actually how we present and bring out the support for farming community within, because obviously there is a lot in here, and I guess also it does cut across a lot of priorities. You know, it's relevant to probably most of them really in terms of what we deliver. So yeah, I think, you know, we obviously want to make sure that that's you know, clearly being able to show what we're doing around that. On the performance indicators around rural enterprise, I think a lot of this is flagging up what I said earlier about, you know, we've kind of imported the indicators as they are at the moment into that new section, Appendix 1. We have struggled a little bit with being able to identify some indicators, which is perhaps why on that section it's kind of focused on care more and not some of the others. I mean, I will, and in relating to the health and wellbeing point that you made as well, Susan, I'll go back and talk to the teams about whether there's anything that we can do now, and if there is, we'll add those in. But if not, it's certainly something that we'll pick up as we review the indicators overall, because I'm quite with you in terms of the, you know, there's a bit of a mismatch a little bit in terms of those indicators and what we're doing around the actions. We just didn't have the time to sort of work on that really before presenting this to you, and also what I mentioned earlier about wanting to look at the outcomes framework indicators as well. So I'll make a note of that. Yeah, and in terms of the income strategy, I'll feed that back to colleagues who are leading on that. I think that'd be welcome. Thank you, to reconvene member group on that. Okay.
Thank you. So the next 3 I've got is Andrew, Bill and Marcus. So Andrew.
Thank you, Claire, for covering lots of material in an engaging way. A couple of observations and one detailed question. It may not be the right forum for it, but overall, the new actions is great. As people said, they all seem to be funded. I was really initially thinking, how can we do that? But obviously, they are funded. One, I pick up on the communication strategy. I've been reading about some of these new actions on LinkedIn, which you've been posting, which I think is a very good communications approach, and I see more and more local authorities using it. LinkedIn's a bit like Facebook for businesses, I suppose, if you've not used it, but and local authorities are using it more and more, so it's good to see that. And it's great I can see you're going to update the values for, I assume, staff values, is that, and that can be a very engaging exercise. I've seen that happen very well, and can be quite lifting for staff if done well. The detailed question I have was around a new action which relates to conversations I've had with farmers and not colleagues, but farmers and friends, around the atmosphere pollution monitoring on Exmoor, because I know a number of businesses on Exmoor which are not quite on hold but not far off it, because they can't build new sheds. In terms of housing cattle, if TV comes along, they have problems. It is a real problem, and I understand. Is this the right form to have a bit of an update on how that's going? I saw that on LinkedIn that we've put it out to tender, asking people to come up with an approach of looking at farms and how we're going to monitor farms. Could we have a bit of an update on that? Great, thanks.
Do you want to do that now? Yeah.
I can just very briefly. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Bill, you are next.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I would like to see something in there about generating profit and income from the estate. There's nothing, anything in there. Manage the authority, land for landscape, etc., but I think we should also be managing our land for profit and trying to make the most of what we've got. And I'd also like to second Jeremy's point about agriculture is really important. It's not just about the centre of the moor. It's the way that that is supported by the farming that happens around it. And obviously there is obviously a problem because we've just, Anna's just mentioned it. If you're trying to build a shed on the, in an area off the centre of moorland, but in an area where you're reasonably intensively farming, want to get a cattle off the land, or you have TB, you have a huge problem there. So I think we need to be very aware of that. But particularly, I'd like to see the estate managed, or a recognition in there that one of the things we need to do is manage the estate for profit, if we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Marcus?
Yeah, really. Mine was quite more of a detail. I think it was number 48 actually, because I mean, really enjoyed reading it, but your eyes are naturally drawn to the bold ones, which I hope I haven't missed any of the other good ones. But it was regarding the planning service and the utilising planning delivery skills funding to address the planning backlog. Now, obviously with the targets being 60% and 70%, the natural assumption is always the 40% backlog. But I suspect, has it been, what does that backlog include? Is that actually applications? Does it include pre-planning? And how big is that backlog, and how there's no sort of target for what percentage we're going to try and reduce it by, and how do we get that position in place, and actually can we afford to do it as well? Because obviously if it is ever growing, that backlog, it's going to get ever more expensive to deal with. I'll probably just leave it at that there. I did notice a bit about the celebrating the English coast path, which is quite interesting, bearing in mind some of the issues we have in my neck of the woods with how the English coast path got there, and whether the right procedures were put in place to actually where it went. But I can understand the sentiment in that one though.
Thank you. Okay, Claire, over to you.
Okay. Yeah, we have tried to be clear about the funding. So yeah, demonstrating that this is money being brought in order to deliver particularly those new actions. And yes, in terms of comm strategy, I think the team are doing a really great job in terms of getting really positive messages out quite regularly through LinkedIn and lots of other social media. On the values work, it really is for staff and members, so it's for us as an organisation. So I would expect that as we develop that work, we will be wanting to engage with members as well around the values, because it should be something that we collectively agree with and sort of operate under those values. In terms of the air quality piece of work you referred to, so we have put out an invitation to quote for a piece of work for some consultants to look into what are the causes of the issues in terms of the basically ammonia and nitrogen, which is causing the problems in terms of the thresholds that are set by Natural England for the designated sites, so the special areas of conservation, which have particular issues both in terms of our moorland sites because of the impacts on things like the bog plants, so those sorts of things, and also our woodlands, because of woodlands are really important for bryophytes and lichens and things. So we want to understand the causes of it, and how local the issues are, the particular areas we really need to kind of focus on, all those sorts of things. But then, more importantly, what can be done about that, both locally and more widely as well. I think, as has been said, I'm not sure it's going to be very easy, but until we can demonstrate that we've got this wider strategy in place, it does make it very difficult to deal with those more specific applications. We are, in the meantime, still working through with Natural England on those specific applications and trying to be able to take them forward where we can. So without going into too much detail on that now, I can obviously update you as that piece of work progresses. I must also just note that that is also dependent on getting funding for that. So we're going to be putting in a PIPL application and looking for some match funding from partners to be able to do it. So providing that all goes well, I think then we will have at least a way forward on that. In terms of the estate and the profit, well,
It's an interesting one, isn't it? And certainly it's you know, definitely part of the thinking around you know, how we fund our work. Obviously, the estate is primarily there to deliver our national park purposes, but it is also, you know, bringing in income as well, and you know, it's really been worked hard in terms of that. You know, charity and Andrew and team and others have really been doing a lot of work there. So and they, I believe they, I'm just looking to Rob, have we set a target around that? I think we certainly, do you want to just quickly, respond on that? We have looked at how much money the estate can bring in.
We haven't set a target, but we, in the estate strategy, which is the key document for this, which you've seen, Bill, we have 10 principles. The fourth principle, to be very, very clear to everybody, says the estate will be financially sustainable in its overall operation and evidenced and generate income for reinvestment. So that's as far as we've gone, at this point, but it's a clear principle of the estate. So we are developing targets. I mean, Claire's already mentioned headline management plans, and we'll set targets for estate income. We have broadly, in terms of the business review, set an overall target, but I'd rather we were more specific.
The only thing I was going to add, thanks Rob, was that, you know, we obviously have that action around developing an income strategy, so I think this is something that we can pick up and look at a bit more within that process. And then just finally, in terms of the action 49, the planning service and using the skills funding to address the planning backlog. No, we haven't set a target for that at this point in time, because we've only really just been given the funding, but we are in the process of putting together a sort of a project plan for what we will be delivering through that funding. So I will be able to come back to you in due course and just give you a bit more detail on that.
Thank you. So 2 more speakers I have at the moment. Robin.
Thanks. Sorry, hang on. That's right. Couple bits really. Awful lot of cross-cutting actions in here, and it'll probably be quite difficult as go forward to segregate what is dependent on what effectively and not. The only one bit it's all dependent on, in my mind, is actually been having the core staffing to be able to do it all. And I think that relates back to the last time. Without that, most of this is largely irrelevant. Secondly, the bit around the estate and so on. But we've got quite a lot of tenants on our estate, or a lot of tenanted land and so on, and the profitability. It's quite a balancing act, I would imagine, ensuring that we deliver national park purposes while maintaining a profitable business there, without being seen to be particularly beneficial to specific people or otherwise, as the case may be, as a public body. So it's that relatively easy to fit in with this. Just an observation really on the rights of way bit within that. There's quite likely a possibility, I suspect, in the very near future that our rights of way will be maintained to such a standard that they'll be markedly better than the road you drive on to get to them. But just a thought. One question I'd like to ask, and this one's a little bit difficult, more difficult for me to ask really. Our ponies. The National Park Authority has some ponies, and it was a question, how much does it effectively contribute, and should we be keeping our own ponies? I know what I think the answer is, personally, but I'd just like to know how that fits in within the corporate priorities and the management. Do we have the capacity and expertise to manage that going forward? You probably didn't expect that question from me, I don't expect, bearing in mind I keep the things anyway. The farming and land management bit is quite a challenge, and yes, I would agree with 1 or 2 here that I would like to have seen a little bit more reference to how that works, especially bearing in mind that sort of relationship between farming, food production. We've got references to the quality of food and everything, and the product, what the produce is, but no real link that I could see between that and its way it's produced here, and that land management, and not a direct one within there. or is it there and I haven't read it properly? And I'll leave you to tell me in a minute the bit I've missed. But I'd like to see something a little bit more direct, because what I wouldn't want to do really is lose the confidence of an awful lot of those people that are farming and doing that land management, that will be able to help us deliver on our nature recovery ambitions and so on in the future. There is an interesting one there, as paraphrased by an ex-EFRA Select Committee chairman in his very recent podcast. He said we can do both, food and conservation management, and that was only out last week. And the other thing is, there's an awful lot here about data. It's so much about collection of data. We're going to end up with a huge amount of data we're going to collect through this corporate plan. How accessible is that going to be for people to make really good use of it? And what are we actually going to do with a lot of that data? Is it going to, how is the intention that's going to contribute in the long term? Great, thanks.
Thank you. I just spotted
You
something.
found it, yeah.
No, I spotted something and thought I've got a funding stream for that. And I'm just nudging the chief executive because I've seen it. Okay, sorry about that. Fran.
Thank you. I realise we're not responsible for housing, but obviously housing cuts across really all of this, and I couldn't find it mentioned anywhere, because if you want a vibrant place to live, to work, and to manage your farms, etc., you need people and you need housing. And I couldn't find. I've read through it and I couldn't really see whether it was in anything that was within this, or whether that is perhaps not the right place for it. I don't know, but I wanted to raise it as an issue.
Thanks, Fran. And finally, Sandy, unless anybody else catches my eye.
Thank you very much. There's a huge amount of delivery of purpose within here, but for me, to balance that is, can you maximise the income and funding in any way? I think it's a great piece of work on the Great Bradley Bridge. And what I particularly liked about the fundraising for that is there were levels of support. If you donate this much, this is what you get, this much, this much. When I've looked at the donation bits that are running at the moment, we've got Sowing the Seeds and Wood and Trees Appeal. I just wonder whether there's any more in that you could say, you know, £25, let us plant a tree. £30 will let us plant X metres of meadow. Lots of people give. In our house, we try and give something to others each Christmas. So it might be water aid, it might be something else. And I just wonder whether Exmoor National Park could do something around sort of giving. I think if you highlight it with people ask, I think a lot will give and support, but it's how you package the ask. So I just wondered if there's more we could do on that to just get more support from the public, given in mind as land goes down. Just a thought for a piece of work.
That's a really good idea. I bought goats and sponsored toilets and all sorts of things. That one person you don't know what to buy for, you've got a loo or a goat. Claire.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the point about cost-cutting actions, yes, I mean, yes, they are dependent on the staff to deliver, but, you know, also the funding is coming in to fund those staff, so I suppose it is an interdependency there. But yeah, we are very aware that, you know, given the early discussions around our core grant, that a lot more now is going to be reliant on these external funding or other income sources in order to deliver it, and the staffing will follow that. Point about the estates and land management. Yes, I think probably on that one, as has been discussed, that maybe that initial section 1, appendix 1, around delivering our core services, that we can add in a few more words around the support for, it is in there to an extent under conservation, for example, but maybe we could do more just to pull out the work around, you know, support for the land management and farmers, so that it is clear that that's part of what we do. And the point about, I don't know what I can say really in terms of the tenants. I mean, it's obviously you know, something that we are very aware of, that you know that there needs to be a viable business you know, for the tenants to be able to run, as well as delivering the things that, you know, we're looking for them to deliver. And that is very much part of the discussions that Andrew and team have with them over rent reviews and so on. So I think that's sort of accepted. I'm not sure that there's anything more I can do in terms of the corporate plan on that, other than, you know, note your comments. The ponies, again, yes, really interesting point. Not one for now, because we do have an Exmoor pony herd, and we do, you know, manage and maintain them. But, you know, that if that's a question that members want to discuss in future around that, that would be something that we'd, you know, would have to look at in future. And then data, yes. So obviously we will report on this. It will be, you know, a publicly available data and information. It is obviously around our own operations and our own performance around that. So we have a lot of other wider contextual data, I suppose, in terms of the State of the Park report, you know, which informs the partnership plan. But that data will be accessible and be able to be used by others. In terms of housing, Fran, it does come into Action 48, where we talk about our planning role. It is around delivering the local plan, but obviously a lot of that does include support for delivering local need of affordable housing, where relevant to our role as a planning authority, because obviously it's the housing authority who are doing the primary work around that, but it is in there. And then the point about doing more in terms of you know, encouraging donations and gifting, I think that is something that we're looking to do around Care More, and I think, you know, all the campaigns have, you know, have looked to sort of do that. You know, so much allows us to plant a tree, or you know, contribute so much towards a bridge or whatever. So I think that would be certainly something that we could continue to promote and do through Care More. And again, that's where the link with the communications team and the work that they do to promote these things is really important. And actually, I think it has been a really successful campaign, certainly around the, you know, the tree planting. It's been one that's really resonated with the public, and I don't know the figure, I'm afraid, offhand, but it has brought in quite a lot of funding.
Thank you. I just want to check, does anybody else want to speak? Oh, Jeremy.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Very, very briefly. Number 11, this is on, where are we here? Appendix 2, page 2. Just a comment, really. Just received the latest Game and Wildlife Conservation Trust magazine, where, if anybody who's seen it, the pine marten reintroduction in the north of Scotland is now looking like it's going to wipe out the black grouse, and they're really concerned about how they deal with that. So it's just you've got to be so careful chucking pebbles in the pond, and you know, the effects can be widespread and not what you really want to hear. Another example, the Tor Valley Little Landowner Group met recently to look at some leaky dams that have been put in, and then 2 days later on Facebook, someone who'd done this several years ago and had quite a lot of leaky dams said through the last few weeks they've all disappeared and they're now blocking the bridge further down the valley. So I think, you know, it's just we need to be careful, and we need to understand the implications of what we do.
Thank you. Susan.
Yeah, I'll just come back in on that point about pine martens. I'm not sure the report that Jeremy is referring to, but I know from the work up in Scotland on pine martens, there's a lot of very detailed, thoughtful, considered work that is going on, and I think that is, from my view, a rather oversimplification of the situation. I don't think pine martens are. My sense would be that's not actually accurate. Happy to go and look at that more, talk to colleagues in Scotland about that. But I think also it's always about the balance of these things. And also the point about leaky dams, you know, they can be incredibly effective in helping to, you know, slow down water flow and that kind of thing. You know, the old way we used to do things was to just, you know, put concrete in river channels, and then we just created other problems. So I think it's always about balance, as Jeremy says. But I think we need to be mindful of just sort of saying, well, that's good, that's bad, and labelling things in this way. So I think there's a lot more that can be done. I'm happy to find out more about pine martins. I think the situation is more complex, and I don't think they're having, from my perspective, that type of negative impact in quite that way. And I think it's really important that, I know if you look at when we had the presentation from the Wildlife Trust with Ali Hawkins, quite recently, the amount of detailed work and consideration that is being done before, pine martins can be put back, with Natural England, with feasibility studies, with all this stuff, We're not just going to be throwing animals out into a landscape, because we have to think of their welfare as well. It's not all just about us and what's best for us. It's also very important to consider these non-human others with which we hopefully exist together on this planet. That's a personal view, but I think it's not that simple. It is more complicated, and I think that the work that's been done down here on pine martins is very thorough and thoughtful, and will be done in a considered way, as it will with white-tailed eagle, as it was done with beavers, which I know also cause upset, but there we go. Anyway, that's enough for me on my soapbox, so sorry about that.
Susan, can I ask you, sorry, it's a bit of an aside, so next month we're meeting informally.
Yes.
It would be really helpful if you could come back to that informal meeting about the pine martins.
Yep.
They are extremely popular with young people. It's really catched the imagination of young people.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be great if we were well informed, and that would be helpful.
Yeah, I can come back. Yeah, there was a brilliant, it's been going doing the rounds on Facebook up in Ardnamurchan. Did you see the pine martins playing on somebody's swing and their rope? It's going everywhere. It's fantastic. And they are extraordinary, reclusive, interesting creatures which, have a really important place in the landscape. So yeah, I'd be happy to bring some stuff back on that.
Thank you. Lee?
Sorry, Chair, thank you. Yes, just to bring back to item 48, Claire, thanks ever so much for reassuring us in terms of the housing provision on item 48, following Fran's point. I just wonder, me and Stephen did a bit of work with a guy called Will Locke from Hawkridge in terms of Exmoor Young Voices, it was Exmoor Young Voices, to try and stimulate sort of housing and affordable housing for the youngsters on Exmoor. And I was working with Dean Kinsella in terms of our credit policy at work. I know we've got this development going up, or due to at Wedden Cross, that's a bit sensitive, but I just wonder what the latest is, whether that Exmoor Young Voice, whether that's stalled or whether that's still continuing, what the latest is, Claire, on that. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, so and we've had a very long relationship with Exmoor Young Voices. It's been really, positive to have them as a group to work with on these sort of schemes, and more broadly, a lot of work, as you're probably aware, that's been done around custom and self-build housing with someone called Justin Tyre who did his own self-build house and now is supporting other young people who might want to do similar things. So yes, we continue to work. They're one of the partners that we continue to work with in terms of that delivery. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, that is all the hands, I think. Oh, Fran wants to come back.
Just a quick one. On Thursday, as part of the Two Moors Pine Martin project, there is an update for us who are members of that subgroup. So there might be a bit of information there that I perhaps can ask about the wipeout of the black grouse in Scotland, if Susan can't get the information. But that's on Thursday here.
Yeah, it's the end cap, and that's missing. So, yeah. But yeah, I can. Thanks. I'll talk to Ali. Thanks for that.
Lovely, thank you. Right, what we're being asked to do is approve the National Park Authority Corporate Plan 24-25, delegate to the Chief Executive and Chairperson Authority to agree minor amendments following the member discussion, which we've been carefully listening to and making notes about, and production of the final plan. And I'm going to add in a third, thank the Climate, Nature and Communities team for producing such an excellent report. Can I have a proposal, please? Well done, Bill. Seconder? Francis? Thank you. All those in favour? That's unanimous against none. Thank you very much. That was very helpful and very useful. I enjoyed that. Thank you. I'd rather keep going because we are only going to do a members' forum at lunchtime, and there's no briefings, and I'd like everybody to have a good break before we have an afternoon of substantial planning chat. Now the monitoring officer's thinking she shouldn't have called it chat. Meeting. Substantial planning meeting. Right. Item 8, back to Ben for the Treasury Management Strategy Statement.
Thank you, Chairman. Exmoor National Park Authority receives reports on Treasury management activities on 3 occasions through the financial year. So in advance of the financial year with this, we determine the Treasury management and our investment strategies. We carry out a mid-year review in November and December, and then a final report is delivered at the end of the financial year. So item 8 on today's agenda recommends our Treasury management and annual investment strategy for 24-25. These are strategy requirements of the CITFA Treasury Management Code 2021, the Prudential Code 2021 revised, and also the 2003 Local Government Act. This strategy concerns the circumstances where the authority can borrow and where funding would be sought from. It contains required prudential indicators, which for the large part for MPA are all zeros. And it reiterates that Exmoor National Park Authority currently has no borrowing and no plans to do so. We are debt free and have investments which currently stand at around 3.1 million. The investment strategy covers the loans that the Park Authority may make to generate a return from surplus cash. However, we prioritise security and liquidity and only the end of the highest yield sought. We benefit from a service level agreement with Somerset Council to manage these investments. This is free from significant risk. The SLA also describes the process by which counterparty is assessed and chosen. Somerset Council assumes the risk to capital of our counterparty default, but any loss of interest would be hit by the park if any cash balances were impacted as a result of a default from one of our counterparties. So, in recommending this Treasury Management Annual Investment Strategy, I wish to emphasise that we are not seeking to depart from current practice. The strategies suggested and continued are a low charge to the authority. I would say they're fairly low risk, and we do benefit from the skills and expertise of the investments team at SC. So essentially, I'm asking you as members to note the report and the prudential indicators and to approve the proposed Treasury Management Strategy.
Thank you so much. Stephen?
Can I thank Mr Barrett for an extremely helpful and informative report and move the recommendations?
Thank you so much. Can I have a second? Oh, thank you, Mike. Anybody want to ask any questions? Mandy?
Thank you. I'll say what I say when I have a similar report at Somerset. I find these are the most interesting reports of the year if you want to look at that broad financial view. I think it's really helpful in the context of the park to understand that broader view. The only thing I didn't know, again unfamiliar, was basis point. I didn't know what a basis point was when looking, talking about Somerset Council and it being reduced by a basis point. That's the only question I have, but thank you. I find it an interesting read and I think it's good for all organisations to grasp that outside state of the world and context. And I think it's certainly challenging times we've seen elsewhere which do indirectly impact. So thank you for the report.
And Bill?
Thank you, Chairman. Just on the borrowing strategy and driver, if we want to maintain our programme of developing driver, should we be considering borrowing if we can't actually get the capital we need? Because it's a long-term project rather than taking out reserve, and that's just a question that struck me.
Thank you. I have no other hand, so Ben, would you like to answer?
Thank you. Basis point, essentially percentage point, really.
0.1.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yes, I mean, were we to have no capital resources, were we to have no reserves or funding from DEFRA, then the next point of call, well, should we wish to prioritise that scheme, would be something like a PWLB loan. But at the moment, our preference is to avoid that and to use internal resources wherever possible.
And Marcus, I'm so sorry.
No, it's more I'll probably take offline actually.
Okay,
It's more of a
that's great.
detailed one.
Super. Mandy?
Just to confirm, if we needed to do anything with driver, we presumably just bring a revised plan back through the committee.
Okay, so proposed by Stephen, seconded by Mike Ellicott. All those in favour? Thank you so much, that's again unanimous. Moving on to the next item, which is item 9. We'll get there. Scheme of members' allowances, Ben, it's you again.
Thank you. There's another statutory requirement, local authorities members' allowance. Regulations 2003 require us as an authority to adopt a scheme of allowances before the start of the financial year. That scheme is in front of you this morning. I'm not going to say a great deal on this other than we link members' allowances to our staff pay awards. In 23-24, that included a cost of living increase of 3.88%. We're projecting at the moment a 3% increase for 24-25. Probably the key thing I'd like to say is that I've taken the opportunity this year to bring in a dependent carers allowance into scheme of members' allowances. And really what this does is makes provision for a kind of a wider step in our activities to encourage greater diversity in our members, provide the opportunity to care for those at home that you have there. Sorry, garbling a bit there, I'm afraid. But this is a new addition to members' allowance scheme. We've reviewed other schemes that are in place with neighbouring authorities and other national park authorities, and that is included in this for the first time for you.
Thank you. And I'd like to say I welcome this. I was very fortunate when I first got on here and had very small children. The Devon County Council paid when my husband went to work, basically. So I really want to say thank you very much for embracing this, and I know Laura will be very pleased because she's the one person that's most affected at the moment. But that might, some of us might have elderly relatives to care for. John.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm going to move an amendment,
Okay.
but before I do, I noticed in the standing orders it says standing order 8.3 on the requisition of any member of the authority supported by four other members, the voting should be recorded to show how each member present and voting gave their vote for or against. I'm assuming I do that now. Is that correct? Yeah. I'd like to do that. But of course I need. Well, first off, I'd like to move this for a recorded vote, but I would need 4 other people to support me to do that.
So John has moved to have a recorded vote. He needs 4 people to support him. Is that 4 in addition to you, or you and 3 others?
I believe so.
Right. So 4 other people need to support John in having a recorded vote.
Can you just explain why?
Yeah.
Because I think that having...
Can you put your microphone on, Jeff?
Sorry. Because my amendment is going to be to reduce the allowances, and I'm doing this because having listened to the Chief Financial Officer present the medium-term financial strategy and use terms like significant and increasing budgetary pressure and a very serious situation and a continued decreasing expenditure, it strikes me that's far stronger language than we've heard from chief financial officers in the past, and it kind of brings home to me the financial situation that is striking us collectively as an organisation. And I know that we all know, because we've been doing it for ages and ages, how every time a decision comes up about staff or something, there's a way to find out how to replace that, the work done by that person by absorbing it into somebody else's work, not just giving another job, or reducing hours or having a part-time post. And at the same time, we've also talked about the pressures on our programmes and the amounts of things that we want to deliver that we could deliver far more for if we had more money. And we all have the desire to do more, because that's obviously why we're here. And now I've looked at the allowances of members in other national parks in England. There's 10 of them, and we've got one of the highest allowances. And as was mentioned earlier, we've got the second smallest national park grant. So I'm just unsure why our allowances are so generous. So when I move the amendment to reduce the national, the members' allowance from 3,100 in round terms by £500, I want to be able to show the members of the community that we are trying to ensure that all the money that is given to us by the government actually finds its way into delivering services as much as possible. That's fine.
Thank you. So this is on John's proposal that we have a recorded vote. Fran, you put your hand up.
Thank you. I'm quite happy to support a recorded vote. I don't mind the public knowing which way I vote. I don't support a reduction in the members' allowances, but I'm quite happy for people to know which way I vote.
So John now needs three more people to Dominic. And Marcus. And Theo. Right. So we now is that proposers and seconders on block? I don't understand how this works. Never been here before.
That's only the voting, that's not an amendment.
No, this is about whether we're going to have a recorded vote. So in the minutes, what does Carol write? For the proposer and seconder. Proposer is John, the seconder is all the other people. Yeah?
Can I clarify, Chair? That if I read the standing order, it says, on the requisition of any member of authority, i.e. me, supported by 4 other members, as we've said, the voting shall be recorded. It doesn't then say, there's got to be a majority. It just says 1 plus 4. And
Susan.
Not wishing to extend this conversation further, I totally understand where John's coming from. I really do. I just feel I don't like being personally. I understand where it's coming from. I will go with what happens. I think things need to happen in terms of reducing costs, but I feel very uncomfortable. I feel like we've been slightly put on the spot after the long debate last time, and there's a lot of issues within all this around income and ability to attend and all sorts of stuff. And I'm struggling a bit personally myself on that level, and so I just feel a bit. I totally get where you're coming from, but I feel a bit put on the spot and very uncomfortable with this because of the complexity of everything that came out last time. It's not that straightforward. But I don't wish to be it, and in no way, I will go with whatever the majority want, but I feel uncomfortable.
I completely understand, and for the benefit of the recording that's being made at the moment of this meeting, I think I need to be very clear that a meeting was held amongst members, a private meeting to discuss this, and there was no conclusion come to at that meeting. So therefore I absolutely understand, because some members gave out some very personal information which is not in the public domain. I think it's quite difficult now, because that meeting's been referred to take this forward very far, actually. Jeremy.
The only point I wanted to make was that we welcome the introduction of a dependent carers allowance. If we then reduce people's subsistence, we might be undermining the very thing that introduction of dependent carers allowance is trying to do.
First of all, there'll be the recording that it's going to be a recorded vote.
Yes.
Then John's amendment needs to be considered, debated, voted upon, whether it will become a substantive motion, and then there'll be a motion on. Then there'll be
the motion on the table.
Then there'll be a motion on the table.
Right.
John's amendment will either stand or fail. If it stands, that becomes a substantive motion, which is then voted upon again.
Okay.
Or if it fails, then it goes back to this motion.
Right, so where we are at the moment, we've got a recorded vote. So John, do you want to come up with your amendment?
Yes, I mean, what I won't do is I won't repeat all the stuff I just said about why I think we need to try and target our expenditure more on providing services and staff and things for the benefit of the community of Exmoor. But what I'd like to do is reduce the current level of members' allowances from £3,095 to £2,595, and then that will be subject to the normal uplift as is mentioned in the report. And obviously, I mean, as everyone else, I welcome the carers allowance addition, which is just common sense, really, which is great.
Do we have a seconder for that?
Can I ask a question? What was the number it's reduced to? I never... John copped. No, I missed that bit.
It was by £500, so it goes to £2,595 a year.
Okay. Do you have a seconder for that, John?
I'll second that, yeah.
Dominic seconded. So that now becomes...
That's, so now you vote on
So we now need to vote on that.
proposed amendment
Hang on, can we not debate that then?
after you've debated it.
Right. Okay. So the first hands I've seen is you, Marcus.
Thank you, Chair. I understand where John is coming from, but I'm going to read to you an email I sent to constituent, I don't have constituents, but somebody who lives in my division who decided to have a pop at me in the local press about something. And well, but they also mentioned about council allowances, and I'll just read my reply I put to her just for consistency. And it's not very long, but bear with me. It says, your point about cutting council allowances is something I disagree with. We need a wide variety of people at all levels of local government. Always fascinates me the different people who end up on, excuse the word council, but even as members. And now it's one of the joys of local democracy. Reducing council allowances restricts those who can stand for council to just the wealthy and retired. I'm now 55 years old, and yet even in 2024 I often attend meetings and I'm the youngest person in the room. Luckily I'm not today. I do think there's an argument for reducing the number of councillors and giving larger allowances for those who remain so they can financially afford to do the role and do it properly. There you go, and I'll leave that. And for me, it's something I've been consistent on this for 25 years. You need a wide variety of people to stand. You need a wide variety of people to afford to be able to stand. As it happens, I could, £500 might not be a lot of money to some people, but to others it might be, and it might be the difference between attending and not attending. And that's why I'm going to vote in favour of the against your amendment, but in favour of the the original recommendation.
Thank you, Marcus. Fran, you were the next hand I saw.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, my understanding is you do not have to take the allowance. So that's a choice thing. If anyone wanted to cut their allowance by £500, £1,000, or not take anything, or not at all. So I think that is personal to the person who's on the national park. So I think for all the reasons that Marcus has stated, I think it's not about our personal situation. It's about the future as well. Because how are you going to attract people to this if there isn't a reasonable recompense? And although many people out here are older or near retirement, or maybe even retirees, the retirement age is going up and up and up. So therefore, not everybody is not getting the pension they thought they were getting when they were 60 years old. So I think if we could, I do not support the amendment, but there is that opportunity to give up part of your allowance if you want to.
Yes, and I do know there's members on authorities that don't take their allowance, and I actually applaud them that they can afford to do it, and that's great. So the next speaker I had was Andrew.
Great, thank you. 2 points really. Firstly, I know I was involved with John we had a small sub group to discuss this sort of thing, and therefore I'm slightly surprised suddenly a number's been put to us like this. In terms of decision-making process, this does not feel good. I've looked at the figures a lot. I like spreadsheets. I play around the spreadsheets a lot, and I came up with some logic of what was perhaps appropriate. But I just feel presenting a number perhaps isn't a good way forward, because there could be some logic coming up with figures and comparing. But again, just coming out of a number out of the blue doesn't feel quite right. And of course, secondly, the diversity thing, the discussion we had, it really did strike me the importance of attracting more people around the table from different backgrounds, people who aren't paid perhaps as well as some. Therefore, I think it's so important to make sure that there is money for people and allowances are paid. So I think that's a really important point, and that really struck me in that conversation we had, the importance of that, and obviously the carers allowance is one aspect of that. So yeah, that's the 2 points I find it a little bit of uncomfortable way that's been put to us. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Francis, then Mandy.
Thank you. Yes, I take the point very much that the introduction of the carers allowance would be very much undermined by the removal of said thing with another hand. And we do have, she's not here at the moment, we do have a youngish member at the moment. The last time we had a young member, she was completely undone by the lack of a carer's allowance, and for very unfortunate reasons, she had to leave. And we just need to remember that. It was very unfortunate. It didn't do us any good in the local area, and I would not wish to see anything happen that undermines the possibility of young people being involved. And do not forget that old people also do caring.
They do, and increasingly so. Mandy?
Thank you very much. I think it's put everybody on the back foot, and this was debated at length previously. Just a suggestion moving forward, I was just trying to bring up the standing orders and I couldn't quickly enough for this debate. I think where an issue such as this, or something similar, or something that needs probably longer debate, that there should be notice of amendments given. It's certainly at other councils, if there's going to be something like this brought forward, it's given notice so people can have a little bit of time to think about it. And I think that courtesy, that should be the way forward, and I'd like, when looking at the standing orders next, for that to be part of it. I understand some amendments can rise out of debate, and perhaps an improvement or a slight alteration. I don't think that is either of those things, so I request, to save this happening again, that is considered for the future.
Thank you. Chief Executive's made a note of that. Thank you. Theo?
I'm the youngest member of the authority, just in case anyone was wondering if the youngest person wasn't here. And I've got a number of small children. So I welcome the dependent carers allowance. Addressing what we've been discussing about the proposal to reduce the members' basic allowance, I don't think this is the right way to make this decision, or the right forum in which to make this decision. I think what was discussed at a previous informal meeting was the idea that there needs to be a proper review of the members' allowances, and I would like, once we've voted on this amendment, to propose another amendment, which is that we request a review of the member scheme of allowances by initially asking one of the independent remuneration panels for one of the county or Unionfield or district authorities to conduct that for us, so that they can bring back a properly considered scheme of allowances, and I think that's the right way to proceed with it.
So it's going through the whole voting system again over that one. That's already in hand. So after we had a discussion, as I've already mentioned, outside of the formal meeting, and that one of the things that came out is that we need to get the independent remuneration panel in, and the Chief Executive has already started dealing with that one, so that's in hand.
Can that either be reflected? Can we vote on something so that is reflected in the recommendations that we have formally supported it? Yeah.
If this one falls, then that would be the place to add it to the recommendations. Okay? Nick, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. I support the idea of the carers allowance. I think that's a very good idea. I, like a lot of people, are slightly taken aback by how it's presented to reduce the allowances. However, I was also very pleased to understand that you can actually reduce your own allowances by voluntary. And I think that is a very good, if somebody wants to reduce their allowance by 200 or 300 pounds, you can obviously take that aboard and do it yourself. But I think that's a very good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Dominic.
Yeah, thank you. So I seconded John's motion, mainly because I wanted to see it debated. And I wasn't at the last meeting, and if I hadn't actually done my own inquiries to find out what was going on and what happened there, there's no way I would have known from reading the minutes, of course, because it was in our members' forum meeting. It wasn't in our public meeting. And what surprised me when I saw the agenda for this meeting, so I'm just opening it again, and saw this report about the scheme of members' allowances, and I noticed, and I think I agree with you, Theo, there was no mention here, as I could see, that this was under any sort of review. You wouldn't have known. So I think it's actually been really useful for John to bring this today for us to actually ensure that in public we are making it absolutely clear that this is up for discussion. Now, although I seconded the motion, I'm not obliged to vote for it. And I do agree with the youngest member, speaking as the second youngest member, that actually, and I'm just looking around the room. I mean, it's pretty clear with this I know this youthful visage. So I think there are many other ways of doing this. I think has been sort of said around the room, and I think this particular proposal, I don't think necessarily, with the greatest respect, John, reflects a kind of a thinking behind it that has been well argued or presented. But the idea behind it, which is what do we do? For instance, we could sort of say, well, actually, we reduce allowances across the board, but we increase carers' allowances. In order to basically more than overcome that. We make the whole thing cost neutral, or we're actually aiming for a particular reduction. There are many, many things that we could look at in a way that is being done. But the thing is, the impression I got, and I wasn't at the last meeting, was that that this was in hand, but there was nothing in here to say it's in hand. So I agree with Sarah that we should, I think, make sure that that is made fully aware that we're going to be doing this. But I would also I think ask John perhaps that in the event that that is now going to be in hand and properly reviewed, that perhaps this particular vote won't be necessary, but that's up to John.
Thank you. Susan?
Just a quick thing. Obviously, age is a very important part of the picture, but just as a reminder to us all, I know we know this, there are a lot of other, whether it's protected characteristics or other things that play into people's ability to sit here. And so I think it's just a reminder there's a lot of, age is an aspect, but there are so many other aspects, that play into all of this, as we know, in terms of personal circumstance, protected characteristics, and so on, that mean people even feel in a position they can even apply, let alone actually sit here or have the time or be given the time off work to come here, or if it would be financially feasible for them to take a day's less work to sit here. So there's so many things that play in, and I know we know that, but I'm just restating. Thank you.
Right, I'm just checking. Anybody else wants to speak on this? John?
Somehow I think this isn't going to pass, but never mind. Some of the points were about, whether it's the right forum or not. Well, as far as I can understand, it's the only forum, and as been pointed out a number of times, we did discuss it at length in a session that wasn't public, just to ensure that there was some sort of commonality of thought. And during that, there was a lot of data presented. And that was presented by someone that was asked by us collectively to go away and find out how to find £10,000 out of the member allowances budget. So Andrew's point about it's an arbitrary number, it isn't really an arbitrary number. If for the sake of argument my amendment were passed, it would reduce costs by just shy of £15,000, because at the moment, even though there's the dependent carers allowance in here, there's no actual budget provision for it. So my unexplained, I should have been clearer, thoughts were that would achieve the £10,000 saving that we, all of us, had asked for, plus provide a cushion to provide funding for the dependent carers allowance. And that's the sort of thing that we would need to do, given the dire financial situation we are looking forward to, and the way that the government is unlikely, as has been pointed out, to come up with a magic money tree and start spreading money around national parks, although one can only hope. But it's not an arbitrary number, it's what we collectively decided. And that's why I thought we collectively ought to take responsibility for it and answer for how we do so.
Andrew?
Sorry, John. I'm looking at my spreadsheet I did, and I don't think we did agree a number.
No. You did?
No, we didn't in the subcommittee. And I don't remember in a forum. No, we didn't in a forum. So I'm looking at the spreadsheet now. I'm going through them, and I can see other numbers. There are lots of numbers there, bigger numbers, small numbers. I don't see an agreed number.
Okay, I'm going to move on. Very briefly,
Just to
please,
clarify this,
Dominic.
but we did see earlier in the finance report that 10,000 has been put in as a reduction from other, so John's absolutely right. We're just earlier today, there's £10,000 sitting there as a reduction. Where's that coming from?
No, sorry, I was just on the 2495. That's the number John's put to us. Vote on, not the 10,000. And I'm going through that, and it doesn't add up to that.
But are we
That's what I'm coming
are
from.
we agreed that the 10,000 is the reduction we're aiming for? I just want to clarify that, because if that's the case, that shapes how this is going to go, and therefore the discussion about the rights and wrongs of reducing the allowance, which I completely agree with, the allowance I think should be twice what it is. I think we should actually pay people properly for what we all do. You know, but that's an issue across the board in a lot of similar settings, and I know people who sit on councils definitely feel the same way. But the fact is, if we have agreed and voted upon and put in our financial plan a £10,000 reduction, we need to know where that's coming from, and therefore discussions about the rights and wrongs of reducing our allowance are neither here nor there. We're just basically arguing about the amount. And, and frankly, I agree with John, that's going to come down to, is that going to be £350 or £400 or what? But we can't pretend that that number we saw earlier today wasn't there.
Mandy.
Thank you, Chair. I thought we'd just agreed a balanced budget. That's the first thing I'd like to say, and can I ask that the question be put?
Certainly. So we've asked that the vote be taken. So we've got a proposer and seconder for John's amendment. All those in favour?
Sorry, do we need a recorded vote?
Yes. You've already done that bit. So this is a recorded vote, so we have to go around the room, aren't we? Right. Robin.
Against.
Jeremy. Stephen. Andrew. Bill.
Against.
Mandy. Lee.
Against.
Oh, sorry. Hang on, we're going too fast. Sorry. So we've got as far. Sorry, yeah, we need to. Sorry. Okay, well we start again. So we did start. Microphone's on. Robin.
Against.
Jeremy, can you put your microphone on, please?
I'm against the
Oh.
motion. I can't put my...
So to the recording, Jeremy Holtam is against.
That might be because the
And other one's on. Oh, sorry.
Against.
Thank you.
Against.
Stephen.
Against.
Against.
Against. Against.
Against.
Against.
Against.
Against.
Against.
Against.
4.
Against.
4.
And against.
Against. Right. So now we move on to the recommendation on the table. I've forgotten to put my microphone on now. Well, hang on a minute, please. Let me, Nick, what did you want to
Just
say?
wanted to propose it.
Hang on, I haven't finished yet. So, the recommendation we have in front of us is to adopt the scheme of members' allowances for 24-25 as set out in Appendix 1, subject to future adjustments to members' allowances as linked to staff cost of pay of living awards, and to make it very clear that includes the carers' allowance, which is happening for the very first time now. Then, in addition, we've had a proposal to add into that, to say doing an amendment. Is there anybody against me putting in that we will have an independent remuneration panel, which will be of our own makeup? It won't be from one of the councils. The chief executive will get it into hand who those people are, and set that up to look at members' allowances. Sorry?
Why do we need to set up our own?
There are two.
Because we're not a subcommittee of the county or either county council.
They're not connected.
But reading of the legislation and guidance suggests that we should be using our neighbouring authorities.
Okay, well, I'm going to leave that out so that you can discuss it with the chief executive about this guidance. I know nothing about that. So I'm going to go to the vote without that addition to adopt the scheme of members' allowances. Do we have a proposer and seconder?
Point of order, I don't think we've debated the paper, Chair. We've
I still can have
debated
a
the
proposer.
amendment.
We can have a proposer and seconder before we debate it. So I do have a proposer. It's Nick. Does anybody want to second it? Jeremy, thank you. Right, anybody want to raise their hand to ask any questions about
What
it?
are we voting on?
We're not voting on anything now because Mandy would like to debate it. Mandy?
The paper, Francis. Yeah, just the paper, debating the paper.
So, just a couple of questions. When I looked at it, the mileage rate, I was sort of expecting to see the national rate of 45p, and it's at 46 point something. So that's my first question. And also there was another question actually on meals and subsistence. When I've looked at a few other authorities, it's quite often when you are away from your current county, i.e. outside of Devon and Somerset, but if you're in the vicinity, then you wouldn't claim for your sort of lunch or meal. So just clarification on that, if I could.
Ben?
Thank you, Mandy. Yes, the mileage rate is a bit of an outlier. I'm bringing the paper back in terms of staffing allowances because staff also get their rates. The proposal to bring that back to the 45 pence per mile in their revenue rate. So yes, it is an outlier. It's a historic one here. I would be looking to reduce that to standard rates.
So if you're going to bring the staff, shouldn't we be doing it here on this paper as well?
Yes, but I haven't done the other one yet, so it's on the long list of me to do.
Okay, Fran?
If we're reducing staff, would that not have to be consulted on if we're reducing part of their pay, if, you know, with the mileage allowance, etc.? So will that delay all of this?
Yes, that's right. So I haven't actually progressed that yet. It's a proposal that we would be looking at those mileage rates and subsistence rates, and some will be increasing, but some, such as this mileage one, would be proposed to decrease. But yes, it would include consultation on that.
The lunch. Subsistence. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've continued what we've done previously, but I can certainly look at that to actually amend the wording to be commensurate with the counties on that side of things.
Thank you. I think that would be helpful.
Francis?
I was just puzzled as to why it would not be appropriate for you to include in the motion that if the matter would be referred to an independent remuneration panel, and leave it at that.
I'm happy to do that. Just refer it to an independent remuneration panel.
Yeah, without specifying that we're going to set one up, or that we're going to use Devon, or that we're going to use Somerset, or one from Timbuktu.
Okay, fine.
Yep.
Lee?
I would agree with Francis. I think we've got to be careful here not to conflict ourselves or mark our own homework, if anything. And so I'd back up what Francis is saying. It needs to be as independent as it can be, so very transparent for anybody to look at. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Stephen, did I see your hand? No. I thought I saw somebody else down that side. No. Okay.
We've got a motion on the table now, and now you're looking to amend that.
I know. Fine. Right, what have we got now? We're going to amend it back to original, to the independent remuneration plan to look at it the next 12 months.
Yeah, you need to do that first, and then that becomes a motion.
Vote on the amendment. Can't we agree that?
Can't we just agree to have it as part of the
Yeah, I think
recommendation?
that's a
So Nick, who proposed, are you happy to take that on as a further recommendation? Just say yes.
Just repeat to me again before
So we're going to adopt the scheme of members' allowances as set out in the report, and to instigate an independent remuneration panel to look at members' allowances.
I'm agreed with that.
Thank you. And your seconder? Are you happy? Could you say you're happy into the microphone, please?
I'm content with that, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a proposal and a second. I see no more hands. All those in favour?
Thank God for that.
Did we? So that's anybody against? One against. Anybody abstaining? No. Okay. Everybody happy? Thank you. Thank you for bearing with me. item 10 is appointments to the planning committee. Now, I'm going to take it that you've all read the report, which is literally 2 pages long. So you will see in it this is the appointments to the new planning committee. You will see in it that we have 4 Somerset council members, 1 Devon County council member, 1 North Devon district council member, 3 secretary of state members, and for that I thank you for agreeing amongst yourselves in a very collegiate way. And then there couldn't get any agreement between the parish council members, so we will need to go for a vote, and that will be a secret ballot. Carol is now going to pass out some bits of paper.
Chairman, would you just like to clarify? It's not everybody.
All right, just so you know that the 4 people who are eligible are Mr Bray, Mr Ellicott, Mr Gein and Mr Holton.
Can it be known that to make life easy, I had withdrawn from this.
and for
but
that I thank you.
I don't know whether it's made it any easier.
No, but you can vote.
Presumably the people themselves can still...
Yeah. Just like to go to an election. No, let's not go there. Please. No, please be quiet. I know you're being frivolous, but we could be going into... Mr Sway.
Tongue in cheek, is there any incentives here?
Well, I don't know how the rest of the groups did it, but Jeremy has an email from me.
I appoint you, wasn't it?
For the benefit of the recording, the votes are now being counted by the monitoring officer.
Any graffiti ones? Any interesting pictures? Any flags? We had graffiti ones.
I do believe that the... Yes, I feel feel like I ought to do something here, but I can't think what. Can we just, there is a recording, so can we try and keep the noise, background noise, oh thank you, background noise down. So the returning officer for this important vote is now going to make an announcement, except he doesn't know how to use the kit. I have no idea whether it's on or not. So the recording, we're having a bit of a problem with the IT kit and how to switch on a microphone. But we are clear now, we know how to do that. So.
Okay, thank you everyone. The appointed members are Jeremy Colton, Bill Geen and Andrew Bray.
Many thanks. Nice. So now we've got that, we need to go back to the recommendation, and it's just, the recommendation is simply to make appointments to the Planning Committee as detailed in the report and agreed by the Authority Committee, which we now will be Andrew, Bill and Jeremy. Can I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Jeremy. And a second, Susan. All those in favour? Thank you. So the next item we have on the agenda is our personnel update, and you can see there listed the starters and the leavers and the slight changes to the National Park Centres because of the changes in hours. Any questions on those? No, thank you. Obviously like to welcome William and well, we did mention earlier last meeting about Shirley leaving. She's been here a very long time. She'll be greatly missed. That's the end of the authority meeting. Thank you for your forbearance through it, and sorry about all my mistakes and tribulations through it.